Hello and welcome to the Gallant Few Rangers podcast. My name is Colin and I'm delighted to be your host today as we continue our journey down looking out with the world of Rangers into the Premier League and the world of football in general. And we've got another couple of offers over on a chat about the book. Today I'm delighted to bring on Peter Prickett and Peter Thornton, authors of Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever, which is a detailed study into the real what if moments that could have shaped football and what the alternative could have been. First of all, Peter Thornton, thanks very much for coming on.
Oh, no, it's great to be on, Colin. Yeah, we love talking about football. That's how the book started.
Well, you're on the right show for that then. And of course, Peter Prickett, thank you for coming on, my friend.
Thanks for having us on. Yeah, that's I can't wait to get cracking with a chat.
Brilliant. So, without further ado, before we get right into the book, which is a really good read, I've really enjoyed reading that over the last couple of weeks. Tell the listeners a wee bit about yourselves. Obviously, this seems to be a labour of love. This book, both massive football fans. What's your footballing background?
I always say football had me at hello at Langworthy Road Junior School in Salford when our school team won the cup and I was 6, and they brought the cup into assembly and the effect that the cup had on everyone in the room, and I thought I need to be in that, and I tried as hard as I could to get on the school team, and then eventually I got on the school team, and that was it. Football has been part of my life since then. So I played to the best standard I could, and then I became a coach, as you often do when you've got kids yourself. I became a coach then. Although, to be fair, the first coaching badge I did was at uni because I was right into it even then, and then I became vice chairman of a junior football club, vice chairman of a junior football league. And then for my sins, I became a director of the Lancashire Football Association. So my involvement with football has been like at every level, and I've loved every minute of it. And luckily, along life's path, I bumped into my great friend, Mr. Prickett, on Twitter, and we struck up a great relationship pretty much straight away. We're on the same page with football, but I'll let him tell you all about his football journey now.
Well, if we're bringing up our youth experiences, I was an all right footballer, played for schools, but the claim to fame for me there is my last schools cup final. We actually played it against Peter Crouch, who was a local. He got a couple of goals in the game, but we scored 6 and beat them 6-2. So it's a nice little one to just quietly have on the CV. But as we're bringing up those formative days, I'll drop that one in. But as a player, all right. But later in my adult life, I got involved in coaching. Did various qualifications, became an FA tutor at various points, and from that written 4 coaching books, and now this is my 5th book.
Well, and what's really interesting, and I was thinking about this when I was reading it, and I won't go into too much spoilers yet. We'll come to a couple of chapters I really enjoyed, but some of the tactical analysis that you went into, and even for some of the, the weird and wonderful fantasy games, for example, that can never happen, that really does shine through. And I was wondering where you both got that, but also your experience in coaching and playing the game as well. That did really shine through. Me myself, the listeners know I love football history. So I first started getting into football late 90s, anything for 92 before. I just love it. I think it's, especially with like my club Rangers being quite a long tenured establishment. That's I love delving into the black and white ages, and that's really came through as well. And I suppose leads me on to the next question: that how did this idea for this book come along?
Well, I always say we sort of both, I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but we both sort of had the idea. I'd been mulling sort of a moments that changed football idea. And then Peter, we'd met, like I say, we'd met on Twitter, and Peter tweeted that he was writing a blog that was what if Messi and Ronaldo played together. So I'll let him take the story up from there.
Yeah, so anyone who's been on social media in the last decade will have seen the regular scraps between the Messi fans and the Ronaldo fans, and never the twain shall meet. And one particular afternoon, it had, well, been quite wearing. And I just tweeted, why can't we just enjoy them? Why can't we use our energy that we're piling into this useless versus debate in some other way? Could we imagine what if they played together? I thought that could be an interesting blog. So I recruited a couple of people, and between the three of us, we each came up with our own version of how we thought it would have played out, tactically particularly. And it got a good reaction, but it sparked debate. And Peter T picked up on that and went to me, we need to write this book.
Yeah, we needed to do it as a book, like I say, we'd both sort of come at writing. I mean, I've just for my background, I've written professionally in advertising and marketing, and then I was lucky enough to work with a lot of football clubs. And your love of history of football, I wrote a lot of stuff for them. I wrote the National Football Museum when it opened, so it always, and then I met Peter on Twitter, and Peter's knowledge of football is, I promise you, encyclopedic. Don't Google anything, just ask Mr. Prickett, he'll tell you matches from way back when, like you've never heard. But what was great, as Pete said, once we started the germ of that idea, from my advertising background, you always know it's a good idea when people go, oh yeah, and you could do that, and you could do that. And between us, very quickly, we'd come up with, half a dozen to a dozen. And then one famous Saturday afternoon, we met in Manchester in a hotel, and we chiseled out, what you have in the book, the 28 chapters. We sort of filtered down the ones that we thought, would be most attractive and be good to write. I think, that was one of the considerations, wasn't it, Peter?
What did strike me is the range of the topics in the chapters, and I'll be honest, like when I'm reading a book, I do prefer the layout you've done, where we don't need to read it back to cover. I can so I went to a certain chapter first and foremost, but it's not really, every chapter's its own story. But I do like the range where you've got some fantasy football matches, you've got some dystopian alternatives, but you've also got the sliding doors moment of the things that we know nearly did happen and very did happen, and quite a big range of football alternatives. How do you narrow down for 28? Because the game's been going near 200 years now. How do you narrow down 200 years of history of sport into 28?
One of the things that happened, and I'll let Pete take up the story in a sec, but what we try to do is not just, if Sergio Aguero doesn't score that goal, City don't win the title. It's like one-dimensional. So one of the first ones that Peter wrote was the Eric Cantona. So he'll explain why that is such a good one.
Yeah, so I'll just go straight into it to Eric. And we know Eric Cantona retired very early as a player. He was still, I think he was 30. He might have been close to 31, but he was very young as a player. But probably a good 4 or 5 years left in him at Manchester United. The question that I ask is, what happens if he continues playing? Now, there's a lot of knock-ons, and from those knock-ons, it's quite possible that United don't win their famous 1999 treble, because Cantona's replacement was Teddy Sheringham. Teddy Sheringham had a pretty poor first season at United, so they went out and replaced him with Dwight York. Now, for the 99 treble season, the York and Cole partnership is pivotal, and then Sheringham scores in 2 cup finals that they win. If Eric's still there, those 2 players just aren't at the club, and everything would play out differently. It's quite possible that the United fans will all just say, yeah, but we'd have won the treble in a different way. And that's fine. That's the point of the book. Your version of what you think will happen is just as valid as ours. We just happen to have written ours down.
And forgive me, I can't remember whose opening chapter it was, the prologue into the book. One of you did write down that it's meant to spark debate. You've written yours down, but there's no right or wrong answer. And I tested this theory in work over the last couple of weeks. Oh, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. Some people were like, no, great. Aye, that's a great shout. Others nearly lynched me out the window. And I suppose that is, I think with a lot of this, you've really captured the debate you have in the terraces at halftime, walking to the game with my dad. Like, one of the age-old questions is, my dad's favourite ever Rangers team was 92-93 Rangers. Mine's is 2003 Rangers. Who beats it? It's that age-old debate. There's no right or wrong answer. You can't prove it, but it does spark debate.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the matchups in the book, isn't it? You've got your own fantasy matchup there with your 2 Rangers teams, and one of the great ones that that Peter writes about is the Real Madrid Galacticos. The 1955-60 team plays the 2002 team with Zidane and Ronaldo and Becco and Figo, and you get that recency bias. I think, Pete, you did a poll, didn't you, on Twitter the other week, and they were all going for the for the 2002 team. But if you look at the 1955-60 team with Di Stefano and Puskas, I know where my money would have been, So that's the fun of it. That is the fun.
I'm trying to picture the 2002-3 Rangers team. Is that are we talking Michael Moles and that era? Is that...
Yeah, Barry Ferguson, Michael Moles, Amoruso, Ronald de Boer, and a wee bit of bias here. It's the first full season I remember watching every Rangers game, and we won the treble as well. But
it's strong. It's got some heavy hitters there. But it's the 92-93 team, or indeed like the 93-94 team. They get a big mention in the book because of the chapter dedicated to Rangers and Celtic.
And I think that leads us nicely on. So, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, I've picked up this book and I've went to one chapter as soon as I've seen it, and it's what if Rangers and Celtic joined the Premier League. It's an age-old debate up here, and it's never going to go away. Obviously, I think the debate for what would happen if they joined now is a completely different podcast. But what I really liked is the level of detail you go around to. You've added an extra layer on, because up here on the terraces we'll chat, we're a big fan base, give us 5-6 years with the TV money, and whether that's right or wrong, there's probably an appetite to feel like we would do well. But what you've went and done is really added the context of what the Scottish game and the English game was like at that point in time.
Yeah, so the first season of the English Premier League, first season of the Champions League, same year at 92-93. And fortunately for our purposes, Rangers, champions of Scotland, faced Leeds United, champions of England. And Rangers won comfortably. Both games 2-1. With John Lukic not necessarily covering himself in glory at certain times for Leeds. But that was a really strong Rangers team. That Rangers team was essentially a point away from reaching the Champions League final, where they'd have faced
AC Milan.
Yep. And there's also the caveat of that Marseille super team then being forever clouded in controversy because of the match fixing.
Yeah, Marseille's a bad word in this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So Rangers were, to all intents and purposes, the best team in Britain at the time. And whether they would have beaten Manchester United head to head throughout a full season, it's up for debate. They may well have done, because United weren't head and shoulders above Aston Villa and Norwich City. But the other heavy hitters of English football are nowhere to be seen in that Premier League season. So I think Rangers would absolutely be top 2 or top 3 quite easily at that time.
What always gets me about this debate is the sort of sanctimonious angle that people, like football administrators take, and yet the precedent is there that, Cardiff have played in the English leagues for time immemorial, for a long, long time. And we've been doing some research on what might be the next book, the next moments that change football. And you read that Rangers played in the FA Cup in 1887. So all the precedents of, we can't have Scotland play in England is nonsense, because it's already happened. What I love about the game in 1887 is Rangers played a team called Church. And Church is a place just over the hill from me, which is basically a church, a pub, and about 6 sheep. So the idea of Rangers playing Church is hilarious. And I think they got to the semi-final that year and lost to Aston Villa 3-1. Now, if Rangers had won the FA Cup then, I think a lot of that sort of sanctimony would have gone out the window, and we'd have got it a lot closer. And as me and Pete have talked about this a lot, as fans of football, and especially, big city football fans, the idea of Celtic and Rangers playing Liverpool and the Manchester clubs and the big London clubs, what's not to like about that? You see it when they're drawn together in Europe, that clash. But I'd much rather see my team play Celtic and Rangers than play the teams on the continent. It'd be brilliant, and it'd be great for the game, I think, and it'd obviously be a great boost for the Scottish game. I really believe that.
Definitely, and I think it's one of these debates that's never going to go away. And if it ever was to happen, the debate will then change as right. Should they move back? And I think it is going to stand the test of time. A, will it happen? B, what happens if it does happen? And I don't know. I'm kind of stuck in between two, where I would love to see Rangers compete in a bigger league, but at the same time, it's, do you then sacrifice being the big fish in a small pond? But you kind of, if that's almost like a dystopian alternative, then if for want of a better word, the next one I wanted to come with was we touched on a couple of fantasy football matches as well, and you've already touched on the Real Madrid for the 50s against the Galacticos. One that I did really enjoy, however, was probably because I'm a bit more familiar with both teams. Everybody knows the 1970 Brazil team, and there shouldn't be anybody over the age of 10 who doesn't know the Spain team of 2008, 2012. Again, like how, I know you've added a wee bit of context both with your coaching knowledge, and because I really like how much you broke down the tactical side of both teams. But how much digging did you actually have to go into, like even the historic part of the Brazil team?
It was definitely a chapter that took a couple of goes, because I did have to watch games. I had to watch at least 3 or 4 of Brazil's games to have a good look at what they were doing. Spain, I watched the 3 finals for Spain to remind myself of how they changed from 2008 through to 2012. And it was when I stopped. I had to stop. I had to go and write another chapter. I had to go back to it again, because that was probably the hardest one, because even when I wrote Hungary versus Holland, that was easier. When I wrote Galacticos versus Galacticos, that was a lot easier. This was probably the most difficult one. And it also was absolutely no question of it not going in, because Brazil are like I've used the term before, sacred cow. If you question the greatness of Brazil in 1970, the social media alert goes off.
We had it last week, didn't we, Pete?
Yeah.
We were trying to publicise the book and said, oh, and put the fantasy match up on, and this guy came on, didn't he? Go and tell him.
Said that I was disrespecting the greatest team of all time. I hadn't even revealed who I thought would win the game, and I do believe that Spain would win it, purely because the line that I took was that I would give Brazil modern techniques, modern fitness levels, etc., but you can't give them tactics they don't have. And tactically, they didn't press at all. So the question that I just could not for the life of me answer was, how do Brazil actually get the ball back from Spain? And I couldn't figure out an answer. Maybe someone with far smarter tactical knowledge than me could answer that question and find, yes, this is how Brazil win that game, but I couldn't manage it. So I have slayed the sacred cow and turned it into a burger.
I really love the contrast of both of you putting a balanced approach onto the cesspit that is social media, where it's a world of extremes. There is no balance. It must make for some.
I think
that's
one of the things it's one of the things we're really proud of, because I'm going to do the big reveal now. I've supported Manchester City since 1968, and Pete's like lifelong Liverpool fan. But despite that huge rivalry between our clubs, we've managed to take that step back and hopefully remained objective. And I think what hopefully comes across in the book is that we're both first and foremost fans of football, really. Obviously I love my team doing well, but ultimately, we're fans of the game. And I think that's what helped the book, come to fruition as much as anything else.
Was it your idea to put Pep Guardiola in my League Two team then? I really love the imagination. Bob the chairman and and Lee the striker.
Well, yeah, it was fun to write. Because it's what I say at the start. Pep, on social media, Pep divides the class, doesn't he? He's either a coaching genius, or he's a fraud and can only do it if he's got £1 billion checkbook. But I was, for my sins, I was so much into Guardiola before he joined City. I'd read all the books, and I think that Spain team, which was basically a lot of Barcelona, the Barcelona team of 2009, 2011. Is probably the best football team I've ever seen. And so it was. That's where we come at it. It was one of those that he's always on social media. I'd love to see him coach at, Rochdale or Oldham. So we invented the team Oldale, and Pep comes and coaches Oldale and see how he gets on, which was great fun to write.
It almost felt like, do you remember the old Football Manager games where you used to create your own club? I felt like I was in that, and just like it was a really fun chapter.
But we did a lot of research, and so I read a lot of books, and Pete knows a lot about Guardiola, and you can sort of mirror things. You can reflect on the decisions he took when he took over Barca B, to get rid of some of their big stars and to bring in young players. I think is exactly what he would have done at that level, swept out the old and brought in new, exciting players at that level, and, malleable kids, and see where he went with them. And so there was a lot of things that you could mirror that, I think I'd like to think made it realistic, as opposed to just, a complete fantasy.
I mentioned at the start, as well as the fantasy and like applying, your almost a wee bit of guesswork and some devised research into what would happen if you went, if you lifted and shifted into a fantasy world. There is a few sliding door moments, which we'll remember. We've got like, what would happen if Steven Gerrard signed for Chelsea? What would, Peter mentioned at the beginning, what happened if Cantona did stay on? That's like, how were they more straightforward to do the sliding door moments, or what would they like to write about?
I think they took slightly less research in some ways, and they were more about the imagination. Although there's one of the sliding doors moments is Abramovich buying Tottenham Hotspur instead of buying Chelsea, which I did stumbling around looking for some interesting things, and I found an interview with Sven-Göran Eriksson, and he describes meeting Roman Abramovich in a London casino because Abramovich wants to discuss which of the Moscow clubs he should buy. And then Eriksson describes a couple of weeks later, he gets a phone call from Abramovich saying Chelsea or Spurs. And Eriksson says, if you want to win now, go for Chelsea. So that one actually took a little bit more research because I had to look at what the relative squads were like, who were the first signings, who were the likely managers at the time, who could have been available, who would maybe not have gone to Spurs, that did go to Chelsea, and all that. So who would they have kept? All that sort of that became quite a complicated chapter.
I think one of the chapters that has the biggest ramifications in terms of what could have happened is the Munich air crash, because it isn't just what would have happened with Manchester United. So there's United on the brink of challenging Real Madrid during their period of dominance. What would have happened to the England football team in 1962 and 1966 is massive. The number of players that would have come into the England team out of that great Manchester United team, and we lost them. The game lost them, and we'd have been talking about them even now. And the changes that could have affected is as big as anything I think we write about.
Definitely, we'll talk about, as you say, a historic moment for club players and, a footballing nation as well. And it does really, like we know football has an impact on culture and like the makeup of certain decades through history. It's a huge one. And again, that sliding doors, like what is it for the impact? I did quite enjoy seeing the name Zidane linked with Blackburn Rovers as one of those as well. Gave me a chuckle.
Crazy transfers is one of the great chapters in the book, isn't it? And go on then, Peter. We give him the quote. It's the greatest football quote of all time.
So Zidane is on the brink. The deal is almost done for Zidane to join Blackburn Rovers rather than go to Italy. But the chairman, Jack Walker, vetoes it with the now infamous words, "Why do we need Zidane when we have Tim Sherwood?"
Which we think should be done as a T-shirt at least, shouldn't it?
If I thought better, I should have prepped a wee banner across the bottom of the screen just with that quote. That would have been so fitting.
But it's brilliant, that quote. Yeah. We love that one.
The very last one I want to ask you about, and it's probably, I really enjoyed it. Well, I enjoyed how much it scared me. It was almost like reading a horror book, this chapter, and probably a stark reminder to, careful what you wish for. I myself, like any football fan, get extremely frustrated with the offside rule, and I do have this irrational hatred every time I see a linesman with a flag. But I really liked the chapter. What if, what if there was no offside rule? And again, probably what drew me to this one was my love of football history through the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, how the game changes. And I did, like, you've really done your homework in the late 1800s, how association football was different for rugby, and we had the different rules and how the game really changed throughout that.
Yeah, again, that involved us doing a lot of research. It not just into the early football games, but how different football games developed. So you could see, like, the Australian rules football. They sort of, you can see it in the Irish versions of football. What you get is a much bigger pitch if there is no offside rule to start with. But the thing that drew us to that is, and it does start from a coaching sort of point of view, and I think, with greatest respect, a lot of football fans miss the idea that it is the offside rule that gives football its fluidity. That back line moves up and down, and the forwards have to move with it, and the game ebbs and flows because of the offside rule. The minute you get rid of the offside rule, we can stand anywhere on the pitch. Well, I don't think it takes a genius to know what people like Sam Allardyce would have done if his goalkeeper can just shell it up the pitch to the other end, where a group of talls jump for it. I think you lose all the beauty of our game if you take the offside out of it. However, what happened recently, of course, we now have VAR, which we're both on record as saying we absolutely hate and deplore, because it takes the spontaneity out of the game. So, Colin, you just said about the linesman's flag, and you got those occasions where, your centre forward would go through, smash it in the net, you'd all jump on, oh, the flag. That was all part of it. That spontaneous moment, you still had it. The flag went up. Now we all stand about for 10 minutes, don't we? Where some chap just outside London is lying as a look, and it's all there for the TV audience. So yeah, that was another one where we did a lot of chatting between us, on that one to sort of work out exactly what it would look like, and we came to that conclusion that it wouldn't be the game that we have today.
No, I really, I never really thought about it that way. It's like, obviously football is an attacking game, but I think one of the lines in it is that the fluidity, and when you I can't remember the exact quote, but the onus is on the attackers to problem solve, and that is really what that's why you fall in love. I mean, like, you have I always say you fall in love with a Maradona, a Messi, a Ronaldo. You then learn to really appreciate and adore a Maldini, but you fall in love with, my example is always Alan McCroist. You fall in love with football because of Alan McCroist, but you do you might you might attach yourself to a club because of Richard Gough, and it's without the offside rule we don't have that.
I think it's one of my backgrounds in football is junior football, and when the kids foundation phase, when the kids first start playing football, and when they do, and you get those small-sided games, you don't get kids trying to take advantage of the fact that there isn't an offside law. The kids just play. Whereas the minute you sort of get into the offside law, then people try and take advantage of it. And what I always say is that whenever they change one aspect of the laws of the game, coaches will work out a way to get around it or to take an advantage out of it.
I thought you were going to say no one grows up wanting to be Gary Neville, but the attackers versus defenders, but it wasn't quite there.
As a former right back at amateur level, I stand with Gary in that one. So
right back union,
right back union, absolutely. Well, I think I don't know. I think that'll probably do us there, gents. I think we've given enough of a snippet of the book to hopefully urge listeners to go and buy it. Where can our listeners find the book? Where's best to go and get it?
Well, Amazon is the very obvious choice, but it is on the bookshelves at your local Waterstones. I say that Waterstones haven't put it through every store. So my advice, if you don't want to buy from Amazon, and there's a lot of people who don't want to, go to Waterstones website, put in the name of the book, put in Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever, and then click on the click and collect button and put in your postcode or your town or city, and it will tell you where the nearest copy available is. We would love it if people went to Waterstones and bought it, because that means every copy that goes, they have to order another one. And every time they have to order another one, they'll start thinking, oh, this is selling really well. Maybe we need to put it in the other Waterstones and add more copies. And that would be great. That's our ideal. But if you can't be bothered to leave your home and you just want the lovely local postie to bring it to you, Amazon's your go-to.
Amazon, they're taking over the world, but as always with these interviews, the links will be in the show descriptions wherever you're getting your podcast, so nice and easy for you to click onto the Waterstones website and get a copy of the book. All that's left to do, gents, is a massive thank you for coming on. Starting with yourself, Peter Prickett. It's been a pleasure chatting to you today.
Pleasure chatting. Thank you for having us and indeed me on.
And of course, the second P, Peter Thornton. Thanks for coming on today.
It's great. It's great to hear someone who's got a similar view on the history of football and is as much into it as we are, Colin. So it's been a pleasure. We really enjoyed it.
And of course, to all the listeners, thanks very much for watching, and we'll speak to you again next time. Take care.